Hey folks, it's Rob Flux here with another Ask Rob Anything, and that's where a member of our community who is an annual member gets to ask me a question and interrogate me and try to stump me wherever humanly possible. And today we have Naveen. Hey Naveen, how are you going, mate?
I'm doing good, Rob. How are you today?
Great, fantastic, mate. You've got a question that you want to try and stump me with. What do you got, mate? Let's go.
Perfect, Rob. Just before I go ahead with my question, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the wonderful annual membership community that you've created. I have been part of this community since more than 18 months, and then probably I watched almost all 70 to 80% of the recordings which has been there, if I'm not wrong, which dates back to 6 to 7 years kind of a thing. And I mean, that has helped me to better understand the dynamics of the the property development world. In fact, that has also helped me to gain some knowledge in terms of how could I do a little bit of town planning feasibilities with some tools and a little bit of financial feasibility as well. So thank you very much.
Mate, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. And I'm glad you're getting plenty from it. That's the point of the annual membership, mate. I guess you can turn up to all of the events, both physical and virtual, all the way around the country. So that said, we still don't know your question. What's your question, mate?
My question is, I'm just trying to understand, how does the no money down deals work per se? And then what are the variations in which somebody could execute that?
Okay, so I'm going to firstly just correct you a little bit, because it's not no money down, it's no or low money down, and that's super important to state, because sometimes you're going to have to actually come up with some cash. But the concept here isn't the fact that cash is not needed. The concept is that it doesn't always have to be yours, okay? And when we understand all the different dynamics that actually go into a deal and the cash flow that a typical developer would pay, we can find opportunities where, when we understand the vendor's needs, we might be able to defer or sometimes avoid some of the costs in the project, okay? So there are actually 7 different ways that you can actually do that. And the whole idea is that we want to control the property and not necessarily own it. So it doesn't have to be us that actually owns it, okay? So as I said, there's 7 different ways that we can make money from property by controlling it. So the key phrase that I want people to understand is your lack of resources should not stop you from being resourceful. So when you're looking at a deal and you look at your bank balance, you go, how am I going to do this? I want you to start to ask yourself the question, how? Okay. Now, to answer this in detail, probably take me about an hour and a half. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give a brief overall summary of the concepts and what those 7 low and no money down opportunities are to make money from the process. And anyone who wants to know the super detail, we teach that in some of our programs, and you'll learn about some of those in some of the real deals that are presented, and a whole bunch more, okay? But as I said, control is the key to the process. So let's firstly understand that from a cash flow perspective, if I was a typical developer, then everything is money coming out of my pocket for the entire deal. I have to come up with a deposit, I have to come up with stamp duty, I have to come up with legal fees to purchase, I need to come up with consulting fees to do my town planner, my civil engineer, my architects, my application fees, all that sort of thing. So it's money out of my pocket, out of my pocket, out of my pocket, all the way through to development approval, to building approval, to construction phase. And then finally, we get to sales. And that's the only time that money starts to come in. And even then money goes out, because we've got sales commissions, we've got settlement fees and a whole bunch more. So it's a very cash flow hungry process. So what we want to do is find opportunities where we can kick the can down the road and defer or avoid those costs. So for example, the purchase price. Well, I don't need to come up with a deposit, and I don't need to come up with serviceability if I can find instances where I don't buy the property. So for example, I might be able to do a landowner JV. So the landowner doesn't actually sell me the property, but rather they stay in the deal. Therefore, I'm not coming up with the purchase price, for example, or the stamp duty. I could equally do that with an option contract, for example, where I might be able to defer the requirement for the cash to a later point in the project, where I might be able to get a development approval and do a soft equity uplift on that that might then have that soft equity uplift might be enough to get me commercial funding to then take that through to construction. So we're always looking for different ways to do things like that down the process. Now, what are the 7 ways? Well, the first way is deal finding. So the number of times that we look for a deal, we find that it's developable, we find that it's profitable, we understand the vendor's needs and what it is that the vendor actually wants to achieve out of the process. And then we look in our pockets and we go, hey, we've got no money, but we've proven it's developable and we've proven it's profitable. We've got an army of people in our community that are looking for deals. So we could easily flick it onto one of them and actually get a finder's fee for that process in doing so. Now, we have to be super careful in doing that, depending upon the state and jurisdiction that you're in. You may need to have a real estate agent's license, or you may have to have a real estate agent working on your behalf to actually, navigate that particular, process for you. But that's
I'm a class 1 real estate agent, Rob, sorry to cut you short. I'm a class 1 real estate agent in New South Wales.
That's fantastic. In which case, you have no issue at all in being able to charge that. Mindful of time, and we're trying to get a super quick answer out of this. Okay, so some of the other ways to actually do this, mate, is project management. You might negotiate and try to purchase the property off the landowner, and the landowner might say, but I already know it's developable, I already know it's profitable, why would I sell it to you? And you can go back to them and say, well, do you know how to run the deal? Right. So if they don't know how to run the deal, perhaps you could run the project on their behalf and get paid either an hourly rate or a success fee or something along those lines, maybe a profit split, all sorts of ways to do that. You might equally be able to find people like myself who do many, many deals and perhaps work for me as a deal finder. So you get the experience, as a project manager, you get the experience in running a project without necessarily having to fund the project. Okay. Lots of different ways of actually doing that. Vendor finance. You might have some of the cash, but not all of the cash in order to run the project, in which case the vendor might actually become the bank for you. So, for example, if I didn't have the deposit, but I do have the serviceability, I could come up with the 80% in order to pay them, but I can't come up with a 20% deposit. So in that instance, I go to my bank and get the 80%, and the vendor would be the bank for the 20% deposit. We would pay them an interest rate and pay them at the end of the project, for example. Okay, so that way we're actually not coming up with any cash out of our pocket day one. Okay, next one would be a delayed settlement with early access. That is where we give certainty on the deal. Say, look, we are absolutely categorically going to be buying it. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to pay for this in 12 months' time, for example. Okay. Now, if I'm paying for it in 12 months' time, I don't have to pay interest for 12 months. I don't have to pay land tax for 12 months. I don't have to pay rates for 12 months. And so instead of giving all of that cash to the Office of State Revenue, instead of giving that to the council, instead of giving that to the bank, I could instead pay more for the property to the landowner if they're willing to wait 12 months down the process. In the meantime, we've had the ability to access the property, actually do and construct the work. And in some instances, we might actually be able to sell the finished product before we've owned the first product in the first place. And that might allow us to actually fund the purchase with the sale of the finished product. Okay. We could also do joint ventures. We could do joint venture with the landowner. We could do joint ventures with the money partner. So the money partner then becomes the person who's actually purchasing it, and we are the one controlling it by actually running the project on their behalf. We might be able to go out and get some private lending. We might have some high net worth individuals, friends or family, that sort of thing, that might want to, pull their funds together and actually invest in us, and we can actually go and run the deal on their behalf. And then lastly is the options contract type approach, where I said before, you might be able to control the property for a period of time, add that soft equity uplift, and then hopefully fund the actual settlement with the soft equity uplift with a commercial loan at the tail. So they're the 7 ways, mate. Did I go through those fast enough?
Wonderful, Rob. I mean, it did give me a brief introduction and then a better understanding as well. What are the ways in which somebody can explore?
Yeah. So every single one of those has some nuances. Every single one of those has some challenges. The key thing, mate, is to actually make sure that whilst we assess our own personal circumstances, we know, look, this is where I'm short of cash, or where I'm short on serviceability, or short on liquid cash to run the deal. Quite often we look at our circumstances and say, well, I must have an option contract to make this work, or I must do a joint venture. And what we do is we start forcing what we want onto the vendor. Okay, that's the biggest way to blow up a deal humanly possible. Instead, we want to understand what the vendor's needs are. When we understand what the vendor's needs are, and we know that we've got 7 different ways to solve this problem, what we can do is rummage around in the toolbox and go, can we find a way that actually meets that vendor's needs based on those 7 different ways that we can actually fund the deal, okay? Or control the property, I should say, rather than funding the deal. And so when we do that, it's amazing how many times the vendors don't necessarily want cash up front today, okay? They might, for example, need to know with certainty how much money they are going to earn, but they need time in order to go find the next place to go buy. So if they need time, why can't we use time to our advantage to get all our development approvals in place, or to start the construction process, or things like that? Okay, that might allow us to pay a little bit more for the property, and we can give them certainty on that. So that might be one of their needs. Another need might be, look, they're trying to achieve maximum price out of the deal. They've lived there forever, and time is on their hands. They have nowhere that they need to go, nowhere that they want to go. And what they're wanting to do is, I guess, find this one opportunity to cash in. Now, in that instance, they might be prepared to stay in the deal and share the risk, therefore share the reward, and share in the profits at the tail. So they're the 2 levers we want to pull. Time, if we get time, we can actually calculate the exact saving in that process. And risk, if they stay in the deal and share the risk with us, then we could equally share the reward. And many, many ways to actually, from a permutations perspective, stitch that together, but only when we are listening to what the vendor needs. And after all, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we should be listening twice as much as we are talking, instead of actually trying to ram what we want down people's throats. Anyway, mate, that was a very, very quick overview. As I said, I normally take about an hour and a half to go through that. But hoping you got some insights into that. And if anyone out there in our, I guess, in our community is wanting to ask me anything, if you are an annual member, then click on the links below, and you can, I guess, try to stump the guru, so to speak. Anyway, would love to see you at one of our upcoming meetups, mate. And for the rest of you out there, come to our upcoming meetups. We have them in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. So if you want to come, make sure that you physically attend, or you can live stream anywhere around the country. Anyway, till then, bye for now.
Wonderful, Rob. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Okay, bye.
Bye.